Humans have a love-hate relationship with change. We need it for growth and variety, and yet we hate the upheaval it brings into our lives. Resilience seems to be the answer. So let's explore a new kind of conversation where we look at the turbulence of change and the resilience that enables us to not only survive it, but to truly thrive from it. I'm Paula Shaw, life transition expert, grief counseling specialist, and author. I'll be spotlighting influential people on this podcast, people who have taken the steps to change it up. So join us as we share valuable information to help you navigate the rocky waters of change. Come on, jump on in. Welcome to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw. And as always, I'm delighted to have you here with me because once again, I have a very special guest to introduce you to today as we continue our conversation about grief. We've looked at grief in so many different ways so far this season. And I think that what you're going to hear today is uniquely different from anything we've talked about yet. Because as we know, we've discussed the idea that grief has many faces. Grief isn't just about death. It's the normal, natural response to any significant loss. And for some people, grief looks like anxiety. For other people, grief looks like depression. For some, it's sadness and uncontrollable tears. And for others, it's fear. It can even be physical illness or the physical inability to really be able to focus, to think straight, to speak clearly. It can take many different manifestations. But I think we all, when we think about grief, one of the first things we think of is the death of a loved one, someone who impacts your life every day or impacts your life in some special way. I know most parents think that the death of a child would be the ultimate agonizing pain. I know that the loss of a sibling can be a really, really difficult loss. Suicides can be a uniquely difficult kind of grief. I have experienced that. We had a suicide in our family, and suicide is so tough because everybody feels guilty. Everybody asks themselves on some level, could I have done something? What if I would have done this? Or what if I'd have done that? And we don't know. We just will never know. But there's another uniquely different kind of grief, and that is the loss of a twin. My husband was a twin, and so I know a lot about the energy that exists between twins. Today, though, we're going to be hearing that from a twin herself who lost her twin. And I think that this kind of loss is so difficult because your own identity is often so closely intertwined with your twin. We're going to ask Raquel Yarborough all about that very shortly. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about her. She is a native of San Diego. She's the owner and operator of Rock Solid Solutions, which is a full-service marketing consulting firm, as well as the managing shareholder with Trading Looks Sunglasses. Her passion for helping others began with her work at the San Diego Rescue Mission. As a child care worker, she was there in her teens, and that ended up segueing into a 15-year teaching career. And today, I got to tell you, when I first met this woman, I went, wow, And I think you will too. So I'm going to leave it at that and I'll let her tell you the rest when you get a chance to meet her. So, Raquel, please join me.
Hi.
There she is. How beautiful you look. I love your background and
Thank you.
knowing your love for fashion, I can see how you tied it all together so perfectly.
There she is.
There she is. Oh, so Raquel, I think the first thing I would love you to do is tell our listeners a bit about your background. What was it like growing up in your family with a twin? And, what was the whole setting like?
It was a lot of fun. We grew up in the 80s, and I feel like the 80s were like the last great era, like the last great decade. Like we played outside, we rode our bikes together, we
Mhm.
skated in our neighborhood. We grew up in a really versatile neighborhood with different ethnicities. So it was a lot of fun to have like a Filipino neighbor, Latino neighbor,
Mhm.
and we all got along just fine. Like it was a simple life. We had my grandmother and my aunt and my mom that raised us up here in San Diego. My
Oh,
dad was here in San Diego as well, so we went with him on the weekend. So he was definitely a part of our lives as well. But we had a lot of fun with our cousins, my twin and I. Like we loved to play outside together. We were like Heckle and Jekyll, two peas in a pod. So if you've seen me, you've seen her, and if you've seen her, you've seen me. Like it kind of was always that way. We were fraternal twins, which is funny. But some people would notice us right off the bat, like, "Oh my God, you're twins," and we'd be so shocked. Well, my mom, she was like identically down to the socks every day. So
uh, that's kind of a giveaway, isn't it?
she was really proud to have twins. It didn't matter where we went. She's like, "Look, here's my twins. These are my twins." We're like, "Mom, okay."
Ah,
But it
and
was cute.
oh, it's adorable. And I think, and you know what I love is even when you're not identical, there's this shared history from moment one, right? Like
Hmm.
in the womb,
Yeah,
you two experienced everything together.
exactly.
And I think that creates a special bond that people who haven't experienced it can't fully understand, right?
Exactly. It's very true because, as I've stated before, like, our parents knew life without us. Her
Yeah.
daughter knew life without her, but we didn't know life without one another. Like, we
Yes.
came out together, we went in together. So everything we did, we shared. And it's funny because we actually may not look exactly alike, but people know it's us because we sound the same and we have the same
Ah,
laugh and type of like humor. So
uh-huh.
quite often growing up, people would call our house and they'd be like, "Hi, can I speak to Rashana?" I'm like, "Oh, she's not home right now." They're like, "Rashana, we know this is you." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's her, it's her twin sister." It's so funny. It used to happen all the time.
Tell me, I'm not really sure what the school policy is. Did you guys go through the same classes together? I mean, were you in the same class or were you in different classes of that same level?
That's a good question. There was a few classes that we shared together. Like I know in elementary school, we had a couple of the same teachers, but not always. Yeah, they did
Mhm.
try to separate the twins, but depending on how big the class size was. But we always managed to, I felt like she was always there through every step of the way in school.
Yeah.
Because at recess and lunchtime, it's like, boom, you're right back together. You always have somebody to eat lunch with. You
Ah,
always have a partner when you start a new school. So that was one of the benefits of being a twin. It's like, you didn't have to do these new voyages alone. You already had someone who knew you
yes.
well.
And someone that it sounds like you got along with very well.
Oh yeah, we did. We did. Obviously the same, sibling banter back and forth, probably arguing over a Barbie doll or something simple like that. But for the most part, we did have each other's back. We were very connected. Yeah, it was fun. It was good having a twin.
And what was it like in the family dynamic? Did you have other brothers and sisters as well?
Yes, we did. They came along later on in life. My twin sister and I were actually the firstborn for my mother and
Ah,
father, and they were
mhm.
teenagers when they had us, so they were pretty young. We had other siblings that came maybe about like 8 years later, but for a long while it was
Oh,
just Rashana and I, and we were like, the apple of the eye because we were the twins. Like my
oh,
mom's
yeah.
mom loved us, my dad's mom, she was actually a twin herself. So twins run a lot in the family. Like there were 23 children, and 4 sets of twins on my dad's
Oh
side
my.
out of his mom. Yeah.
Wow.
And my
Wow.
mom,
That's
she
amazing.
had twin uncles. So like twins like ran rampant on both sides of the family.
When you have it on both sides, it's pretty much a done deal. You're going to have some
It
twins
is.
somewhere.
We also
That's
have triplets
crazy.
in the family too, which is funny.
Let me ask you another question. One of the things that I always wonder about twins, did did you feel that you had your own identity? Or, did you and she just kind of act as one?
That's a good question. That was one of the things I think that we vied for, is because the unison identity was forced on us. It was like you have to
Mm.
dress alike no matter what, and you had to look like, same hairstyle no
Yeah.
matter what you thought about it. I
Uh-huh.
mean, so for us, like we were as one, but we were uniquely different because it was like we had to split. Like people say Geminis are like two-faced. And I'm like, well, we're the Geminis and we're the sign of the Gemini and we're twins. So I feel like we kind of split the way. So I kind of went
Mm.
one way with the personalities. She went another. She was in the
Ah.
math and science. I was in the reading and writing. I mean, she did write poetry as well. But in terms of, she was more tomboy. I was more girly girl. So I feel like we had a good balance between the two of us. So we
Yeah.
didn't have to like fight to be the same person, which was good.
That's really good. And
Mhm.
I love the way your family handled that because I think when you feel like, and I would imagine it could be even more difficult for identical twins, but when you
Definitely.
have to dress the same and you look the same, I have a feeling the way people perceive you is almost the same. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So then it would
Mhm.
be even harder to develop that unique identity. But it sounds like you and Rashana did a good job of that. You were
Yeah.
who you were.
Mhm. Yeah, and that went up to adulthood. We still hung out a lot, like up to our teenage years. When we turned 21, we were going out to downtown, our first nightclub together for our 21st birthday. Like we did
Oh,
have the same
nice.
circle of friends. So it was good that we were able to cultivate that. And
Mhm.
at the same time, we also were able to cultivate friendships outside of our unique universal friend circles. So
Yeah,
we had different circles amongst us, but we also shared circles as well.
very good. So you did have some friends in common, but you also both had your own group.
Yes. Yes, we did.
Beautiful. All right,
Yeah.
listen, we've got to take a quick break, but when we
Okay.
come back, let's get into the story of how you ended up losing your sister.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Is living in today's fast-paced world making you feel stressed and out of balance? Are anxiety, sleeplessness, depression, lack of focus, or weight gain robbing you of your relationship and your energy? If you're ready for change, you need to call Paula Shaw. Paula helps you identify and eliminate self-sabotaging thinking and behavior. Using a wide variety of mind-body techniques, she provides her clients with the most effective processes for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, here with my guest today. I almost started to call you. We've been talking about her sister, Rashana. This is Raquel Yarbrough, and we
Yes.
are talking about what it was like in our last segment. We talked about what it was like growing up as a twin. She had a twin sister, Rashana, who ended up tragically being killed. And the grief we're talking about today in this show is the grief that Raquel experienced in not only losing a sister, but losing a twin who,
Mhm.
as we were just saying, was with her from moment one in the womb. Their shared history was complete, even enjoying a lot of the same friends.
Mhm.
Although Raquel was just sharing with us, they also had their unique identities. And I love that.
Mhm.
So tell us a little bit about what exactly happened. How did this tragic death occur, Raquel?
Okay, so this tragic death occurred actually on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 2017,
Mm.
which was a Saturday. It was the middle of the day on a Saturday. The crazy thing about that day is it was a great day for me. Like I felt like I was reaching this pinnacle in life. I was actually speaking on a panel of women for the state of Black women in America. Like
Oh.
just giving perspective on media and just like how we're viewed and just, just carrying yourself in a certain manner and just like the observations. So I felt like that was an amazing day. My mom was out there in the panel. So at the time I was managing Massage Envy in La Jolla. I had left work to go do speaking on this panel. And while I'm there, distinctly remember receiving a text message from Rashana and it said, "Hey sis, what are you doing tonight?" And, she did WYD tonight. So, typical my sister, like, want to link up, like, hey, what are we going to go do tonight? We're going to go have some fun, meet up with friends. And so I remember seeing the text at around like 1:11 and not being able to respond because I was on the panel. So I put the phone down. And so I'm there speaking on the panel. And, by the time I was done with the panel, I never got to respond to her text message because my sister was killed by around 2:15 that day. In the middle of the day on a Saturday. So like that was one of those things for me. Like I always kept that text message at the top of my text messages because I would look at it and it would be a reminder like, hey sis, what are you doing tonight? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with yourself? Like, make sure you're in a good space with good people and forward moving. But to get back to things, I left that event. And as I was driving to work, I walked into the office. And as soon as I get there, I get an anonymous phone call from someone. It's a 323 area code number, so that's in LA. And they said, hey, I know you don't know me, but your twin sister has been shot and she's fighting for her life right now.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, wait, what? Because like for me, like my twin sister, a little background on her, she's like 5'2", petite, peacemaker, poet, writer. Like she's a very loving, fun friend. Like she's nonviolent. She isn't in situations of those nature. And so to find that out, I'm just like, wait, what's going on? So I called her girlfriend at the time and I said, hey, I was like, I just got this phone call and she's just like crying hysterically. So at this point, I know something is real because it turned out she went to LA to visit this person and I didn't know she had just left. She went there on Friday night. And so by Saturday afternoon, she was killed. But long story short, she was there at a home with friends that she'd been at several times before. One of the other people that was there, she was up drinking that morning. Yeah, later on I checked her Facebook and she was up at like 7 o'clock that morning because it's St. Patrick's Day saying, hey, who wants to have drinks? So you already know the mindsets. If you start drinking at 7 a.m., and here it is, 1 something, 2 in the afternoon, you probably went a little bit far with the drinking. But long story short, she was in a domestic dispute with her partner. And my sister, being the peacemaker that she is, tried to break it up and assist by removing the, person from the situation. And she turned her anger on my twin sister. Turns out I don't know, she had a gun the whole time or she went and got a gun, but as I was told, she had a gun. She started hitting my twin sister with the gun and a bullet went off and shot her. And so I don't know how long it took for her, for them to get help. That's the other questionable thing for me is because these two individuals went on the run for 3 days. So they managed to get out of the house and evade police for 3 days. And the person that my sister was seeing was still there and she stayed with her until the ambulance came. But she ended up passing away at the hospital before we can even go to see her or like talk to her or anything. Yeah, so it all happened really fast. It was like one of those things where, I heard she was shot. I'm thinking, okay, well, the worst case, she may be paralyzed. She may have issues, but we'll take care of her. We'll nurse her back to health. She'll be all right. But, to not have that opportunity was just like, well, to find out over the phone from the nurses, like, hey, your sister didn't make it. It was just like the most devastating thing I could ever hear.
Oh, Raquel, I can't even imagine how difficult. It would be tough if you were there by her side, but to not even be able to get there and for her to be gone before you got there has just got to be some kind of hell.
It was because I was her protector. She was my protector too, but I just thought like, man, like I wasn't, if I could have only been there with her to help save her from this event, like, whoever was surrounding her, I feel like they didn't put enough effort into protection or into looking out for her best interest, which is something that she and I always did for one another. Something happened to the other was going to come along and help and assist. Like, didn't matter what it was, but I felt like I wasn't able to be there for her in that moment. And that did hurt a lot.
And while I'm sure it was incredibly agonizing for your parents, the
Mhm.
point you just made, that you two always were there for each other, you
Yeah.
always had each other's backs, that
Mhm.
creates a different kind of agony for you, because
Mhm.
that was your role. That's what your
Mhm.
role had always been. And
Mm.
yet, in this circumstance, you weren't able to fulfill your role.
Exactly.
Oh, that must have been so hard on you.
Yeah,
So,
that was the hard part, because it was just like, geez, if I was only there, you know what I mean? You
oh,
just think about things like that.
mhm.
Yeah, the one moment you're not, like, this happens.
Now,
Yeah.
were you the one that had to tell your mother?
Yes, I was.
Oh,
Yeah.
honey, tell us a
I
little bit
found
about
out
that.
Yeah, I found out in the car by myself. So I'm calling around to, police stations and different hospitals in Los Angeles. And the first thing I had to do when I left work, I'm like, hey, I have to go, you guys. My twin sister's been shot. And so I jet out of work. I'm driving. I'm frantically calling my mother. And I'm like, hey, Rashana's been shot in Los Angeles. So then she's gathering herself. And we're just thinking, okay, we got to drive out there to her.
Yeah,
And, in the meanwhile, I'm calling hospitals, but they're not really giving me information because it was, a gunshot. And so I guess they
right.
have to be private about that. But
Mm,
luckily, I did get a hold of the proper hospital, and they were like, okay, the nurse is busy right now. She'll call you back. So by the time I get to my home and I pull into the driveway, the nurse calls me back. And, she says, I usually don't do this over the phone. She was like, but because you're coming all the way from San Diego, I just have to let you know she didn't make it. And that was in that moment I was sitting in the car by myself. And I just felt like, oh my God, like I had to roll down the windows because I just felt like all the air was sucked out of there, because it was just
yeah.
like, what is, like, this is not the news I expected to
Mm,
hear. I just full on felt like it was going to be a recovery process, but we would be able to recover her. So
yeah.
again, like, that was devastating, and that was a moment that I really can't even explain, to be honest with you.
And then did you have to walk in the house and tell your mother?
Well, yeah, so I was home, so I was alone. I walked into my house by myself, but it just kind of like catapulted because she had a daughter, and her daughter was 17 years old and a senior in high
Oh,
school at the time. So it was like not even just telling my mother, it was like, my mother telling her daughter, and then like hearing the blood curdling scream from her daughter in the background as I'm on the phone. It was just like, that almost wiped me out, because you just hear her scream like, no, and she just runs away. And then
oh,
you have to call, my dad. And then, we had 6 other siblings, another set of twin sisters. So it just like the news carried on. And then, like, all of her friends, it was a lot. It was a huge bone to carry, because it's
oh.
like you don't want to be the one to deliver that news. But I'm a very upfront and straightforward person. So I'm
Mm.
not going to just hold on to something either. And I just had to let it be known. And then there's that instant where it was like, okay, like, what are you going to do? What are
How
you
did
going to
your
do?
how did your parents handle it?
Oh, my mom and dad were very, very hurt, because, everyone loved Rashana. She was just that one. Like, she remembered everyone's birthdays. She
Mm,
always had a laugh. She was always very, you think I dressed nice? She was very well dressed too. She put herself together. And she
mhm,
was just like a seeker of knowledge, and she always shared that knowledge. So she was just
mhm.
that person that anyone could have a conversation with. So she was a huge loss to a lot of people, in terms of she was someone that they leaned on, like, for
Yeah.
happiness, like just to make them feel good. Like, they could call her and she's always
Mhm.
going to show up. And so it was a big loss to her community and our family too, that I didn't even know about. I met people that knew my twin that I didn't even know she knew, that reached out
Mm.
to me and were like, hey, your sister was the one I used to talk to when I was depressed, or your sister was the only one that I could confide in. Like, who am I going to talk to now? Like, some of these people were very devastated, and it made me feel even more in awe of my twin. Like, wow, sis, like,
Mm.
I didn't even know that you did all. I knew you were great, but like, for these people to
Wow.
be so desperately hurt because you were their shining light in their lives, and the way
Mhm.
they really
Mm.
profoundly expressed this to me, I was like impressed with her even more. I was like, wow, sis, I didn't even know
Wow.
you were that great. I knew you were great, but wow.
So tell me, Raquel, because I deal with grieving people all the time
Mhm.
in my private practice, and I know there are a lot of things that can be helpful, and a lot of things that are not helpful.
Yeah.
What was helpful to you and your family, and what was not?
Gosh, to me, it was the point I had to look at death differently, because it was just like, okay, this, like, this could either take you out or it could build you up. So for
Exactly.
me, it was very important to keep things on the up and up. Like, I didn't want to dig into this morose, really sad,
Mhm.
deep feeling, because I knew that that could take you out. It was like I had to look at it in a way of like her light and keep it alive in a positive manner. So for
Mhm.
me, it was like us getting together and just talking about it, first of all, and like in a good manner, like just sharing like the stories about how she
Mhm.
helped, about her fun. She always, like, we took a lot of pictures. Thank God for that. Took so many pictures, so many videos. Like I said, she did poetry. So she actually went out and performed her poetry. So I have so many videos of
Oh.
her on stage doing her work. So it was just really beautiful that she left us with all of those gems. So that
Mm.
was something that what we did when we got together was we would share moments that she brought us together, like of light, of love, and her legacy in a positive manner.
Beautiful. That's
Hmm.
so helpful. We
It
have to
was.
take a quick break, but when we
Okay.
come back, let's talk a little bit about, were there things that happened or that others did that weren't helpful?
Okay. Yes.
We'll be right back. Paula Shaw here. I'm thrilled that LifeWave phototherapy patches, which use no drugs or chemicals, have become a part of my life and my business. My family and I all use their wearable patch technology, and the results are life-changing. My parents in their 90s used the X39 patch, which activates stem cells, reverses aging, and improves the function of every area of the brain. I love X39 because I can work out with a 30-year-old with no problem. And it's erased my fine lines and given my skin a youthful glow. LifeWave patches use a patented form of phototherapy, frequencies of light, to safely boost health and wellness at the cellular level. No drugs. To learn more, go to my website, lifewave.com/safe health. That's lifewave.com/safe health. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and I'm here today with a very special lady, Raquel Yarbrough. And we're talking about what she experienced in the tragic death of her twin sister, Roshana.
Mhm.
So, Raquel, what were there any things that happened or things that people did that were not helpful? Your family
Yes.
you were dealing with really what people would think of as one of the worst things possible.
Mhm.
This tragic death, violent death of your twin sister who was such an important piece of your life.
Mhm.
And this is the part that I think a lot of people would either just get mad at God and totally turn away from any of that thinking,
Mhm.
or as you mentioned before, like crawl into a hole and just give up because they can't imagine how life could be so cruel. So tell us a little bit more about your journey. What were the things that didn't help?
The things that didn't help, I can smile and laugh about it now, but at the moment, like, it's true. Like, you sometimes you want to retreat because it all felt so overwhelming. Because there, again, when it's someone that is so important to so many other people, like, you have to relive it each time.
Mhm.
So I mean, at some point I just had to turn away from like my Facebook inbox because it was just filling up with so many people that
Yeah.
just wanted to know, wanted to hear, wanted to speak, wanted to share. And I understood that. But at the same time, I felt like I wasn't getting a moment for myself to process
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I was in this position of consoling everyone else. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, well, gosh, like, I need to console myself, like,
Absolutely.
this is my twin. I know she's important to you, but I mean, like, energetically, I felt like I was going through changes because, like I said, like, just having her presence was always a part of my presence.
Yes.
And so it was like difficult finding that balance of like wanting to not leave other people in the dark or leave them feeling sad. Like I'm very empathic, so I'm always wanting to make someone else feel better. But it got to a point where I was just like doing this and doing this and doing this. And so I had to retreat. And through doing that, I would retreat and I just had to like sit with it for myself and understand myself. So I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to like resonate and like have my connection with God and be like, okay, God, like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like there's so many options. Like, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to, go into this crazy depression. Like, I know I need to deal with this properly, but how do I do that?
Yeah.
So, that's when I started meditating and praying. But when I would go out and people would see me, this is the big no-no. It was like, if you see me out and then you say, oh, hi, Raquel, I'm so sorry I heard about your sister. Like, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine today, because if I'm out, I'm doing fine. Like if I wasn't fine, you're not going to see me.
Yeah.
But then they would always grab me on the shoulder, like, no, how are you really doing? And I'm like, I'm really fine. Like, like they would like really try to pull it out of you. Like,
Yes.
You want me to like cry at the restaurant, or you want me to cry at the street corner. Like, you want me to cry at Target, like, wherever you see me. Because I would bump into people everywhere,
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh, because she knew so many people. They would say, oh my gosh, I heard about your sister. So in each of those moments, those people want me to get sad. They want me to express like what is taught to us to feel.
Right.
Oh, I should be crying. I should be looking a mess. I should all these things. And if I don't express that, then maybe I'm not expressing my true feelings. And I'm like, no, like, I just truly like, I have to be okay today. You know what I mean? Like, I can't like grunge this up every time and that type of energy, because that's what's going to deplete me. And that's what I realized. I was like, God, I have to look at this differently, because if I don't, it could take me out. Like if I treated it how like other people think you're supposed to treat it, which is continuous sadness, continuous depression, continuous crying, then I just know I would not come out of it on top. So I had to realize, what is this teaching me? How do I stay connected? Because I truly believe in energy never dies. So I had to first tell myself, like, wait, she's not like gone. Like, she's not like,
that's right.
She's not in a human form anymore. She's not in this world anymore, but my sister is still very much alive in another capacity. So that's one thing I had to find peace with, is like, okay, I know that her presence is still here. And now the kind of beauty of it is I can tap into her presence from anywhere, because when you're in human form, you're limited to what you can do.
Yes.
When your spirit, you can be anywhere. You can be in a flower.
Absolutely.
You can be in a hummingbird. It could be in any beautiful moment that I share her light. I feel like I'm connecting with my twin sister. And that's what I started having to teach myself, because if you go to the other route, it's like you just feel like this sense of loss, because you're like, I can't touch her, I can't hug her. But it's like, you can feel her in other ways, and you just have to like understand and retrain your brain to process it differently.
Boy, you've just said so many things. There were so many golden nuggets in what you've just shared. I ended up writing a book called Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say.
Yeah.
For the very reasons that you've just described. Because when someone in their life has suffered a loss, they want to help. Most human beings feel a connection of that with that pain. If nothing else, their fear that someday it could happen to them. So they want to help, but they don't know what to say to be helpful, or if they should say anything. Now, you've just presented a very interesting perspective. You didn't really want them to go digging around in there to see if there were some more tears they needed to have you cry, so they could put their arms around you and feel that they'd helped. And that's the hard part, for people to tune into what the griever really wants. So maybe the best thing they could have done with you would have been to say, what do you need right now? Or is there any way I can help you? What, because we don't know what to do that's appropriate, and of course, each person is going to be in a different place. And so what too often happens is, because they feel uncomfortable and inadequate, and poorly prepared to handle this correctly, they don't step in at all. They don't say anything at all.
Mhm.
They don't go visit. They don't call
Mhm.
because they just are terrified. They're
Yeah.
terrified they're going to make it worse, and in some ways, some of those people did make it worse for you. Fortunately,
Mhm.
I think you were fairly grounded and strong in what you felt, and you knew what you needed.
Mhm.
So you didn't let them drag you down. But some people might not have been able to handle that as well.
Yeah.
I love your point that, yeah, I'm doing okay, or you wouldn't be seeing me. I think that's how
It's
I would
true.
be for sure. I'm not going out in the street or to Target
Yeah.
if I'm not feeling okay.
Yeah.
But you're so right that, um, on the other hand, I've had people who have come to see me professionally and shared, no one brought it up.
Oh.
I went back to work and nobody said anything. Now that's an awful experience too,
Yeah.
because they don't know if people just don't care or if people are terrified to bring it up. And
Yeah.
usually they're terrified to bring it up.
Yep.
So, you experienced at least some people who were bold enough to
Mhm.
acknowledge the elephant in the middle of the room. But I think the message here is tune into the griever, see what the
Yes.
griever seems to need and want. Is that correct? Is that what I'm hearing from
That's
you?
correct. Yeah, that is so correct. Because like it was in the workspace, like I felt like there wasn't a lot of acknowledgement when I went back to work, but I kind of read it as they probably just didn't want to bring that energy there.
Yeah.
And so it is a fine-tuned balance. And it all boils down to what you said is to be in tune with the individual. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you see them and they're about to cry, then okay, then you open those arms up and you give them a pat. But
Yeah.
if you see them and they seem to be smiling and enjoying the moment,
Yes.
then you can give them a short acknowledgement and say something like, it's so good to see you smiling and in
Mm,
light of everything that's happened. I'm glad that you're resonating in a high spirit right now, or something to that effect, where like you
yes.
acknowledge it, but you
Yes.
also acknowledge where they're at with it, so that because sometimes I felt people would challenge me and want me to cry, like keep
Yes.
pushing, and I'm like, dude, like I'm not like because then it will be conjured up. You know what I mean? I got the cries out alone, or maybe I did cry on someone's shoulder, because of course I did. But
Mm-hmm.
now that I've got that expression out, I try to like feel my feelings and then release them. And even if the same feeling comes up, like I feel it, but I don't try to wallow in it. I acknowledge it, I
Right.
feel it, but then I grab onto something that's going to elevate me. And I understand that crying is something that's necessary, but it's not going to take me to the next step.
Mm.
Just like
Ooh, I
smiling the whole
love that.
time is
Yeah.
necessary, but you also have to cry in order to smile. So you have
Mhm.
there's steps to it, and you can't just stay on one step too long, because then it ghosts you and it takes you down. So it's like there's levels. You just have to express yourself, but don't wallow in it.
Yeah, boy, that was so well said, Raquel.
Mhm.
So well said. Because yes, expressing authentically is critical
Mhm.
to grieving and healing. But you're right. Then you need to move through it.
Mhm.
When I was going through a really tough grief experience, one of the things that helped me was to make a promise to myself that every day I would do something, whether it was to meditate or to light a candle or to
Mhm.
take a gratitude walk
Yeah.
outside or something to help myself move through it and
Mhm.
not get stuck in it. And I think you make that point. You got to take the next step. Yes, you
Mhm.
got to cry those tears. You got to give yourself what you need and be authentic,
Mhm.
but you need to also keep your sights on how do you re-enter life.
Yes.
And one other thing you said that I loved is, sometimes it felt good to be laughing and to be engaging with people. I just recently read a fabulous article on the importance of positive emotions. And
Mhm.
what this doctor was saying, this psychologist, feeling positive feelings, laughing and expressing those things actually helps to create a psychological reset It's
Mm,
like I always thought of it as a reminder that this isn't all life is, that
yeah,
there will be joy again. There
yeah,
will be joy on the other side.
yeah.
So I love what you said and the way you said it, and other things that you did to help yourself find some peace. You mentioned meditating,
Mhm.
praying. Anything else that was particularly helpful for you?
Well, I think also like I stopped drinking, I think
Mm,
it was a pivotal time for me, like, because sometimes when people or even in celebration, people tend to want to drink, right? And when
mm,
you're mourning, people tend to think a drink can fix it. And
yeah.
so I just wanted to get out of that space and it just wasn't serving me anymore. And I think
Mhm.
that was pivotal for me to
Yeah.
actually regulate my own emotions on a clear head level and
Mhm.
not fall into that, oh, okay, let's go out and have a drink because we know you're having a tough day. It's like you don't want to fall into that aspect
Yeah.
of life. And just even in my own personal life, I just think it was the best thing ever. And I feel
Mhm.
like that gave me the clarity that I needed. But
Mm.
also, I started listening to like healing chakra music, different frequency music. Like I just stumbled upon it on my Spotify playlist, and
Wow.
it changed my life. It completely changed my life. Like every day, that's what I do. Like it's like I am affirmations, chakra healing music, and that's like the tune of my life because I would read it and it would say for anxiety or for grief or for this, and so I would just
Uh-huh.
play it, and I would just lay there and I'm like, wow, okay, like I'm healing myself. I'm letting the music, the tones work on my vibrations, and so it's giving me the fortitude to move forward in the formula that I need in order to expand into this next level of my life. Because, like I said, my life hasn't always been roses, but I definitely didn't think in the chapter of my book that I would say at 37, my twin sister was killed. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That was just
Right.
something that just really came way out of
Mm.
left field. So I was like, okay, life is not a joke. Life is
Mhm.
precious. You need to honor your moments. It taught me to be careful of my surroundings and the people that I'm around
Mhm.
because it was the middle of the day on a Saturday for her. She
Yeah.
was texting me
Yeah.
and saying, hey, what are you doing? So she had no idea. But she
Mm-mm.
said, hey, sis, what are you doing? An hour later, she was going to be gone.
Yeah.
And it's just like that. And it was just like, for me, I was like, whoa, like, let this be a lesson. Like, because so often we lose someone and we focus on the loss. And sometimes we get really sad because we're like, oh, if I could have just hugged them one more time or told them I love you one more time. And so we get caught up in that train of thought.
Yes.
But rather than looking at the bigger picture of like, okay, this is teaching you that, you are immortal, you know what I mean? And something can happen to you and that's
Mhm.
completely out of your control. And the beautiful thing about my twin sister and I, though, like I thank God about, is that we were in such a good place. Like we've always been in a good place, but I mean, I'm telling you, by the time that this happened, we were in a place where we both individually, maturely, like looked at each other. We're like, hey, sis, I love you. Like you're amazing. These are
Mm.
your qualities that I like about you.
Nice.
These are my qualities that I like about me. And we came together like with authentic moments where like it was no competition, there was no spitefulness. There was nothing about us because we finally had reached that plateau where it was like, hey, you're an honorable woman and I see you for who you are. And even if you weren't my twin sister, I still love you because I think you're amazing. And
Oh,
so that's one thing
good.
that I'm like, God, thank you, thank you, thank
Mm.
you that our last
Mhm.
moments were great moments and we have been hanging out together and doing fun stuff together. And it's interesting to me too, because it was like, maybe a month or so leading up to this tragic event, I had been taking my sister everywhere with me. Like, hey, this is my twin. Like introducing her to like my other side circles of friends, and
Uh-huh.
really like it just really like showboating her around because I was so
Wow.
loving her. And so I'm like, God, thank you. You knew what you were doing because she knew she was honored by me, and I knew I was honored by her. And yeah, we just had that moment where it was like a clear moment, concise time where we just
Mm.
said, I appreciate you, and I was able to tell her I loved her poetry and I love what she does. And so
Mm.
all this stuff was expressed. So it also taught me to always like tell people how you feel about them, truly how you feel about them, so that you won't ever be in a moment where like if this had to happen to her and I hadn't had those moments, gosh, I would probably be really tormented right now. But I can
Yes.
feel free because she knows that I loved her and I know that she loved me. And yeah, it's a blessing.
Oh, Huge. I love everything you've said. And we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to hear more about how your life is feeling these days, Raquel.
All right.
We'll be right back.
For those looking to improve their lives, there's nobody better to turn to than Paula Shaw. Paula helps people regain successful lives by identifying and eliminating self-sabotaging behavior using a multitude of mind-body techniques to identify and resolve their core issues. Working with a wide variety of healing modalities, she provides her clients with the most effective process for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is Raquel Yarborough. And I'm telling you, this woman it's like sitting with a guru. Oh, you have shared so many beautiful, insightful nuggets today. And you've been such a beautiful incredible example to our listeners of how a person can live through something as tragic as the death of your twin sister and come out of it this incredible, beautiful being that you are. And you know, last night I was reading about something called kintsugi, and it is the Japanese art form of when something breaks, when it's damaged, when it's hurt. They repair it with an adhesive that has gold in it. So when it's repaired, the gold lines are actually representations of where the pain was, where the break was, where the damage was. So I'm thinking of you right now as a living example of kintsugi.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your life today. What are you doing, Raquel? What's your mission? What's your passion? What's your work?
All right. So my life today is peaceful. You know, like I'm feeling very grateful for my position that I'm in. I am moving forward and living life for her and living life for me. So it's no more living on small terms, you know, like I have decided that moment I was going to honor her life by continuing my life and making it great, by being the epitome of the person that God created me to be. And she always held me to a high standard. And I love that and appreciate that about her because she knew me well. You know, she can call me out on anything and be like, hey, Raquel, you know, this is not your best or that's not your best. So for me, I'm using that as a tool to move forward in life. And so one of the things that I'm working on is like redefining myself. And that's what I've been doing. And that's the idea that we came up with together. Both of our initials are RDY. And one of the last moments we had fun, we were like dancing on the dance floor at some club. And we looked at each other and we were talking about, you know, we should do a nonprofit together and use our initials for it. So we're going back and forth in the middle of the dance floor, just trying to figure out what our acronym is going to be. And so that's when we came up with redefining yourself, which is RDY.
Great.
And we were talking about like her bringing her talents together and my strong points together and helping other individuals redefine who they are and not live life based off of how they've been raised, based off of their socioeconomic status, based off of like their limiting thinking just because of how they've been perceived in this world. We want to inspire other people and empower other people to redefine who they are. And I feel like this was the opportunity for me to do that. Like this tragedy was, I had to redefine myself because there was no other way to do it. You know, you can't go on living life the same way once something like this happens. Like you realize like, wow, I am blessed and I am fortunate enough to still be here in this world. And so I cannot take that for granted and I won't take that for granted. So for me, it's been about living a purpose-driven life and intentional living. So when I go somewhere, when I do things, like my intentions are to have a purpose. It's no more just like willy-nilly, just, oh, I'm here, I'm there. Like, no, where you are matters in every moment of your life. And that's why her sending that text message, hey, sis, what are you doing tonight? Or, hey, sis, what are you doing? That's powerful to me because when I read it, it reminds me, like, what are you doing? Like, are you doing something that's substantial? Are you doing something that's forward moving? Are you doing something that's going to benefit you and benefit the whole? And if not, you need to rethink what you're doing right now. So with that, I did start a new business called Rock Solid Solutions, which is a consulting firm for marketing. And that's something that, I've always had the mindset to do. But I feel like losing my sister and seeing her life be cut short and of all the opportunities and how far I've seen her going in life, it's like I have to take the baton and I have to run with it. And I have to be great. It can't just be mediocre. It can't just be simple. Like I have to move forward and live life for the both of us, which is what she asked me to do. So that's where I'm at, meditation, grounding, taking care of my 4 cats, making sure I engage with people with positive energy, love, and light, and just moving forward in a great capacity.
That's so beautiful. And so what's an average day in your life look like?
Well, when I rise up, I open my eyes. Usually there's a cat doing biscuits on me or something and massaging me. I love it. But, the average day of my life, I rise up, I smile and look around. I say, thank you, God. I give gratitude for my day. And, I read Ephesians 6:10 in the Bible, put on the full armor of God. So I take that serious about, when I step out these doors, I am going out there with the full armor of God and I'm moving in a good capacity. And, I do my grounding. I'll either go for a hike, I like Cowles Mountain pretty often, or I'll go to Balboa Park and do my grounding. And, I make tea, ginger turmeric tea, and I like to clean my house before I leave. And then, I have intentions. Like I have a whiteboard set up in my kitchen where I have different ideas and different things that I'm working on. So I always keep a vision on what I'm doing that week and what are my intentional goals for the day, short term and long term. So I tap into a lot of different things, but I always make sure it's forward moving. There's no more miscellaneous. There's no more room for miscellaneous anymore. The world is real, life is real, and you can make it what you want it to be. But that all depends on the steps that you take every day.
Boy, and you mentioned a while back working with your energy, the chakra music, chakra balancing and all that. So many people don't realize we are energy.
Yes.
We are, everything in the universe is energy. And I loved what you said about your sister still being here. She's not in physical form, but quantum physics has taught us that energy can't be created or destroyed.
Exactly.
So you're right. It changes form, but all the energy that ever will be and I've ever has been is here. And so you're right. And we have to take care of it. We have to do maintenance work with it to keep it strong, to keep it moving in the right direction. And I think it's so wonderful that you are aware of that and that you make that part of your everyday.
It is. Well, it makes every day so much better. I mean, it's it's the only way, if there's something in you feeling off, you need to tune into yourself and figure out what that is, because we get our cars aligned and we get our car oil changed. You spend more time worried about your car being aligned and running functionally than your own vessel. This is like your car. If you feel out of alignment, you need to realign yourself. And the beautiful thing is all of this is available to us. You know what I mean? The beauty of the internet or doing research on yourself is you can heal yourself. You can realign yourself. You don't need any other tool or vessel except for you. As long as you can breathe, you can get yourself into alignment. It doesn't matter how far gone you are or where you're at in life. There's always a way to naturally get yourself back to where you need to be, and you can elevate from there.
Yes. And having those positive thoughts now has in studies that have been done, they have seen that those people heal better and faster than the people who just get stuck in the negativity or thinking life isn't worth living anymore. And so everything that you've shared today has been so powerful and so important, Raquel.
Thank you.
And what I'm also struck by is when your energy is in a great place, great things happen to you. And there aren't a lot of coincidences. I met you at a Rotary meeting and I knew immediately that I wanted to know you. And I thought about putting you on the podcast, but we were doing this and you and I spoke that day, remember? And I said, I'd love to have you on my podcast, but I'm doing a theme on grief. And you went, oh, I can speak about that. And you
Yeah.
started telling me the story of Roshana. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh. And then just the way it all fell together so
Mhm.
perfectly for today and what you've shared today, I can't thank you enough. I feel
Thank you.
so blessed, and you have blessed so many people.
Thank
And
you.
so before we end this show, please tell people how they can find you, how they can reach out to you, if they're interested in the marketing help or
Yes.
anything else you're doing. So please tell me or tell us how to reach you.
Well, yeah, I do have a website for Rock Solid Solutions. So it's www.rock, R-O-C-K, solid, S-O-L-I-D, solutions, S-O-L-U-T-I-O-N-S. And the last two letters are SD for San Diego, so .com. So www.rocksolidsolutionssd.com. You can also come and check me out at Trading Looks Sunglass Store in Little Italy, where I am at Wednesday through Sunday. We have amazing sunglass styles, and we're a brand here from San Diego. And you can also find me on Facebook under Raquel Yarborough, or Instagram under IamRaquel.1111.
And all of that contact information will also be in the show notes. So if you're
Perfect.
driving or wherever you are listening to this, don't worry, you can still find it and reach out to Raquel if you want to know more about any of the things she's doing or this amazing message that she brought to us today. So Raquel, thank you again.
Thank you.
You have truly blessed us today.
Thank you.
And thank you for being this shining light to people who have dealt with tragedy, dealt with grief that they feel they might never be able to recover from. Here's the future, guys. You just need to listen to this lady and try to do some of the things that she's done, and
Yes.
you'll find your way back.
Yes.
Thank you, Raquel. And thanks to all our listeners and viewers. And we'll see you next week on Change It Up Radio. Bye-bye.
Perfect.
Thanks for joining me on Change It Up Radio. I hope you found this episode informative and entertaining. If you want to hear past shows or you want to get information on being a guest or a sponsor of this show, go to changeitupradio.com. We all know that change is inevitable and it's necessary, but darn it, it's also tricky. My goal is to help you make the experience of change smoother and more productive. If you've benefited from this show, please subscribe to it, share it, and review it. That helps me to tune into what you really want to hear and what you really want to learn more about. Remember, you can find us on every major podcast platform and also on YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We look forward to seeing you next week for Change It Up Radio.